Okay, finally, we got to the part where we will install our machine with all the interesting hacking tools that we will use. Hopefully, you're excited since by the end of this video, you will have your Kali Linux machine running and ready to use. Here in our VirtualBox, in order to start the process of installation, we must first select our virtual machine and then click on this Start button right here. This will start our virtual machine and it will start the process of installation of operating system. Okay, so let me enlarge this, even though the screen of the installation will stay smaller size, but that is just during the installation, so don't worry. And right here in the installer menu, we're interested in two different options. Either graphical install or install. They're pretty much the same, just graphical install is prettier, so that's why we're going to go with that one. Click here enter. The next thing it asks us is to choose the language, and for the purposes of this course I will proceed with English, and you can pick whichever language you want. So just select whichever language you want. I will select English and I will click on continue. In the location part, this is only important if you want to have the correct time zone correspondent with your country, and right here it also tells us that these countries from which we can choose are strictly based on the language that we picked in the previous step, so in case your country is not on the list, like mine isn't, you can go right here on other and select your country. If it is on the list, select it and click on continue. Now, since this really isn't that important step, I will just proceed with the United States. And here under the configuration of the keyboard, I will select American English and I will click on continue. After setting up our keyboard, the installation process will configure some stuff required for our machine to run, and you will notice most of the stuff is done automatically, so we don't need to worry about it too much. Whenever a certain question pops up, I will tell you what you need to select to proceed to the next step of installation. Okay, so after a few seconds, here is the first question. Let us read what it wants from us. So it says, please enter the hostname for this system, and the hostname is a single word that identifies your system to the network. If you don't know what your hostname should be, consult your network administrator. If you're setting up your own home network, you can make something up here. Okay, so we're not network administrators, therefore we can just make something up as a hostname, so let us just go with Kali. Why not? And let us go on continue. Domain name, this is something that we want to leave empty, so just delete everything right here and proceed to the next step. Okay, so we got setup users and password step. Now, in the previous versions of Kali Linux, it usually asked you to set up the password for the root account. And unlike, for example, on Windows, we got the user accounts and administrator. On Linux, we got the user accounts and a root account. What a root account is basically the same as an administrator in Windows. It has elevated privileges, it can execute commands that user's account cannot execute, and in this newest version of Kali Linux, we are required to set up a user account. So here we got the step where we need to specify full name for the new user, and it tells us that specifying our full name would be a reasonable choice, and if it was any other course instead of a hacking course, I would also tell you to specify your name here. But I must teach you to also think like a hacker, and we hackers want to stay as low-key as possible, so specifying our real name is not an option for us here. We can just make something up instead. Let us go with Mr. Hacker. Why not? Let's click on continue, and the username we can also leave to be Mr. Hacker. There's nothing really to change here. Of course, if you want, you can specify something other than Mr. Hacker. It is completely up to you. Just make sure you remember the username, since you will need it to log into your machine after the installation. So I will leave it on Mr. Hacker and click on continue. And here is the step where we need to choose a password. Now, password is the important stuff. We must make sure we choose a strong password for any type of account we create. Let me tell you one interesting fact. A lot of black hat hackers were caught because they had a weak password. We are white hat hackers, but it is still a good practice to always choose a long and strong password. So let us do it. I will type mine right here and re-enter the password. I will type it once again. You can choose any password that you want. In case you want to make sure that you typed what you wanted to type, you can click right here, Show Password in Clear, as well as in the second step, you can also check Show Password in Clear. And after you choose your password, you can click on Continue. So here, configure the clock. You can select your time zone. I will go with Eastern. And here, after loading few more additional components, it should ask us about disk partitioning. Here in the partitioning disk, we have a few options, and we're interested in the first one, which is guided to use entire disk. We're not really interested in encrypted hard disks or anything like that, so just select Use entire disk and click on Continue. Here we get a warning that all data on the disk you select will be erased. And this right here is a hard disk that we created in the previous video when I created my virtual machine. And you remember that I gave around 30 gigabytes to my virtual hard disk, so this is that one, and I will select it and click on Continue. Here it gives us some of the options as to how the disk can be partitioned. We will proceed with first option, which is all files in one partition, which is also recommended for new users. Don't worry about these other two options which mention /home, /var, /tmp. These are all just standard Linux directories, which we will see shortly after installation. So just click right here, all files in one partition, click on Continue. The final steps are finish partitioning and write changes to the disk. We want to click on Continue there as well. And right here it will just ask us, are we sure that we want to write the changes to the disk? We want to select right here yes, and we want to click on Continue. So after clicking on Continue, the installation process will start and it will take some time. It can take possibly around 20 to 30 minutes, maybe even longer, and it will also ask us a couple more questions in meantime. I will fast forward to the first question that pops up, and you just pause the video until you get to that step of installation. Okay, so here is the next question, configuring the package manager, and it asks us for the HTTP proxy information. Leave blank for none, and we do want to leave blank, so we're not going to type anything here, and we're going to click on Continue. Here in the software selection, we want to leave all of the checked things, and we also want to add the large option. So leave everything checked that you see right here, and click right here on large. What this will do is it will install additional tools in our Kali Linux, and we want as many hacking tools installed with our operating system, so we don't have to waste time installing them later on. So just double check that all of these options are checked, desktop environment, XFCE, these lower three, and the large option as well should be checked. After you get all of that, click on Continue. And this step of installing software will take some time. So just go grab a cup of coffee or take some snack, and I will see you in around 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so after a long installation, here is another question. And it asks us, should we install the grub bootloader to the master boot record? First of all, what is grub? Well, grub bootloader is a software that loads Linux kernel. It is the first software that is started at system boot. Let us read what it asks us here. It seems that this new installation is the only operating system on this computer. If so, it should be safe to install the grub bootloader to the master boot record of your first hard drive. Warning: if the installer failed to detect another operating system that is present on your computer, modifying the master boot record will make that operating system temporarily unbootable, though grub can be manually configured later to boot it. We want to click here, yes. And you might be asking, wait Alexa, but I'm running other operating systems. I'm running macOS or Windows. Don't worry, remember, this is a virtual machine. It doesn't know about your main operating system. For this virtual machine, this is the only operating system that is being installed. So it is safe to select yes and proceed to the next step. And in here, we want to select /dev/sda and click on continue. This will proceed to finish up our installation, and it might ask us a question or two more, and then we should be ready to use our Kali Linux machine. Okay, and this final step says installation complete, so it is time to boot into your new system. Make sure to remove the installation media so that you boot into the new system rather than restarting the installation. Since we don't have an installation media, and this is probably referring to a USB drive in case you installed an operating system over USB, and we didn't, we installed it in virtual machine, so we can simply just click on continue. This will finish up the installation, and then it will reboot our machine and open up our Kali Linux desktop. Here it is, our virtual machine is starting up for the first time. Finally, here is our login screen to our Kali Linux machine. Here we want to input the username that we typed in during the installation, so in my case it is Mr. Hacker. And down here you want to input the password that you used during the installation. Then you can click on login. And here it is, our first hacking machine. Now, in case you're wondering why is it smaller screen, well, to fix that, in most cases you can simply just do this, lower the screen, and then enlarge it once again, and now it should be in full screen mode. In case this didn't work, don't worry, in the next video we're going to perform some of the checks of our virtual machine to check the internet connection, whether it is in full screen mode, and other things as well. So don't worry if your machine isn't in full screen mode, it will be after the next video.